Investigators are still combing through the wreckage of the helicopter crash that killed Kobe Bryant, his daughter, and 7 others. Authorities say that the aircraft was flying in fog so heavy even police helicopters were grounded. Chris Van Cleve has the latest on the investigation and the new video that appears to show the flight's final moments.
New video appears to show Kobe Bryant's helicopter circling just minutes before the crash that killed all 9 aboard. The NTSB used a helicopter today to airlift key pieces of wreckage out of the rugged hillside crash site while investigators hunted for smaller items. Investigators are poring over pilot Ara Zubayan's history and helicopter maintenance records. Preliminary flight data shows the trip started normally. About 15 minutes later, the pilot began to circle. The weather was getting worse as he waited 12 minutes for air traffic control to clear him onward. About 9:40, flying below the clouds, Zubayan asked controllers to track him on radar, but he was too low. 4 minutes later, radioing, he was climbing to go above the layer of clouds. Flying now in potentially blinding fog, he reached 2,300 feet before turning left. In its final 12 seconds, the helicopter began to dive, falling at nearly 5,000 feet per minute. The last recorded speed, about 184 miles an hour. NBA star LeBron James spoke to Bryant earlier that morning. In an Instagram post, James wrote he was heartbroken and devastated and promised to continue Kobe's legacy. Bryant's former teammate, Shaquille O'Neal, also talked about losing his friend.
I haven't eaten, I haven't slept. Our relationship was that of brothers.
An outpouring of grief for all of the victims, including baseball coach John Altobelli, his wife and daughter.
He had the perfect life, perfect wife, perfect family. It's just mind-boggling how quick that went away.
And Chris Van Cleve joins me now from Calabasas, California. Chris, in your package, you mentioned that the pilot attempted to avoid a layer of clouds before the crash. Do helicopters usually fly in these type of foggy conditions? How big of a role might the weather have played in the crash? That's the question that so many people are asking today.
A lot of people are asking questions about what role the weather played and if the pilot should have continued flying. Now, typically a helicopter flies under visual flight rules, and basically that means the pilot can see where he's going. And typically it's you've got 3 miles of visibility in front of you and clouds at least a couple thousand feet. He didn't have that situation here, and it is unusual when a helicopter flies off of instruments, which would be the other option. So there are some questions about the decision to climb into the clouds. Of course, if he felt like things were worsening and he didn't have another option, you do what you can do to try to get everybody on the ground safely. But the question here is he climbed, and certainly that helicopter could have climbed above the clouds, but after he climbed to 2,300 feet, the helicopter turns to the left and begins a dive. Why did that happen?
Right, and then the helicopter also circled the area for about 12 minutes before it was actually approved to enter the controlled airspace. Is this one of the things that investigators are going to be exploring now?
Well, so that happened earlier in this chain of events. They were about 15 minutes into the flight when they approached Burbank Airport, and that's busy Southern California airspace. He had asked to go to special flight rules where he would be operating with lower visibility, and the air traffic controller said, I need you to hold over Glendale because I have other airplane traffic in the area, and until that traffic cleared out, he needed to hold, and then was cleared to move along. The weather appeared to be deteriorating at that time, so I think the NTSB will certainly look to have a full understanding of the weather conditions throughout this flight, but it's not uncommon for aircraft to encounter sort of a traffic jam around a Southern California airport, and that's essentially what happened here. The question is, what was the weather doing as they were waiting, as that flight was getting longer?
Wow, and you see those images of the wreckage. It's really horrific. So, Chris, aside from the weather, are you learning anything more about what the investigators are looking into to determine the cause of the crash?
We're so early in the investigation, really everything is on the table. They are going to look at the pilot and his flight history. We know he had at least 8,200 flight hours. They're going to look at the maintenance history of this particular helicopter. They are going to go over the wreckage. If they can get a good look at the engines, they're going to take those apart if they need to. They want to determine if anything mechanically went wrong with the helicopter. And basically, you think about it, you put all the options on the table. Over time, investigators are going to try to pull things off the table, so you're left with the scenario that was the most likely cause here. It could be weather, it could be mechanical failure, it could be something else. That's why they take a very comprehensive and a very slow, methodical approach to figuring these things out.
Comprehensive and slow. So what does that mean in terms of when the public may actually get some answers, Chris?
Well, typically the final NTSB report takes a year. We will get some sort of a preliminary report typically in about 10 days, and that's a statement of the facts as they know them at that point. But it is a long process, and we may get some clues. Certainly, there are some big questions that have already come up, but it will be months, if not a year or more, before there is a clear answer from the NTSB about what they believed caused this crash.
Chris Van Cleve, thank you so much.
Sure thing.